the clatter of dishes echoed through the kitchen of Lumiere, each crash sending a sharp pain through my swollen feet. 6 months pregnant and barely making ends meet, I adjusted my black server's uniform for the 100th time today, trying to hide the growing bump beneath the fabric. The elegant dining room was a far cry from the penthouse I'd once called home, where crystal chandeliers and imported marble had been my daily backdrop, instead of grease stains and demanding customers. Grace, table 12 needs their wine refilled, and the VIP section just seated. Marcus, the floor manager, whispered as he brushed past me with barely concealed irritation. His eyes flickered dismissively to my midsection before turning away. I'd managed to keep my condition hidden for 3 months now, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. I smoothed down my apron and grabbed the wine bottle, pushing through the swinging doors into the main dining area. The soft piano music and murmured conversations of Manhattan's elite created an atmosphere of refined luxury that felt like a mockery of my current circumstances. 6 months ago, I'd been one of them, Gabriel Moretti's wife, adorned in designer gowns and protected by his dangerous reputation. Now, I wore sensible shoes that pinched my feet and counted tips at the end of each shift, praying there would be enough for next month's rent. The VIP section was positioned in the far corner, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels. As I approached with my head lowered in the submissive posture Marcus demanded of his staff, I could hear familiar laughter drifting from within. My heart skipped, but I pushed the paranoid thought away. New York was full of confident male voices and tinkling female laughter. "Good evening and welcome to Lumiere," I began my rehearsed greeting as I stepped through the glass doors. "May I offer you our wine selection to—" The words died in my throat as I looked up. Time seemed to crystallize, the air catching in my lungs like broken glass. Sitting there in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, broad shoulders commanding the space around him, was Gabriel Moretti. My husband. My ex-husband. The man whose child I carried. The man who had discarded me like yesterday's newspaper, when his trust had turned to suspicion and rage. And across from him, draped in a crimson dress that clung to her perfect figure, sat a woman I'd never seen before. Her manicured fingers were intertwined with his, the same fingers that had once traced patterns on my skin in the dark. The diamond on her ring finger caught the candlelight and scattered it like shattered dreams. Gabriel hadn't noticed me yet, his attention fixed on the blonde, whose laugh sounded like champagne bubbles. "I was thinking we could do Tuscany for the honeymoon," I heard him say, his Italian accent wrapping around the words the way it used to wrap around my name. "The villa overlooks the vineyards." Honeymoon. The word pierced through me like a blade. I should have backed away, should have asked another server to take the table, should have hidden in the bathroom until my shift ended. But my feet remained rooted to the plush carpet, my body betraying me as it had been doing for months now, with its changing shape and unpredictable reactions. "Excuse me? Are you going to take our order, or just stand there?" The woman's voice cut through my paralysis, impatient and entitled. Her blue eyes assessed me with the casual cruelty of someone who had never known want. Gabriel looked up then, those steel-gray eyes that had once looked at me with love and desire now meeting mine with cool assessment. For a moment, there was nothing. No recognition, no reaction, just the calculating gaze he gave to strangers. Then his pupils dilated, and the color drained from his face. Grace. My name on his lips still had the power to send a shiver down my spine, but not of desire anymore, of terror, because I knew what Gabriel Moretti was capable of when he felt cornered, when his carefully constructed world was threatened. "I'll get another server for your table," I managed to whisper, already backing away, my hand instinctively moving to shield my stomach. His gaze followed the movement, understanding dawning in those cold eyes that had once been warm with love. He half rose from his chair, but I was already turning, walking as quickly as I could without breaking into a run. "Who was that?" I heard the woman ask, her voice carrying across the sudden hush that had fallen over our corner of the restaurant. I didn't hear his response. Blood pounded in my ears as I pushed through the kitchen doors, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The memories I'd fought to suppress came rushing back. The argument, the accusations, the night I'd fled our penthouse with nothing but the clothes on my back after discovering what kind of man I'd really married. Not just a businessman with questionable associates, but the head of one of New York's most powerful crime families. Grace, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia, one of the other servers, appeared beside me with concern written across her weathered face. I need to leave. Now. My voice sounded distant, as though it belonged to someone else. You can't just leave in the middle of a shift. Marcus will fire you, and you need this job. Her eyes widened as she glanced toward the dining room. Wait, do you know who's at table 12? That's Gabriel Moretti. Nobody crosses him in this city. As if I needed the reminder. He's my ex-husband, I whispered, the words bitter on my tongue. Sophia's face paled. Holy shit, the Gabriel Moretti? And he doesn't know about the baby? I shook my head, fighting the urge to vomit. Everyone in the city knew of Gabriel Moretti, though few had seen him. He operated in shadows, his influence extending into every corrupt corner of power. I had been young and naive when we met, dazzled by his charm and the intensity of his attention. By the time I discovered the truth about his business, the violence, the blood on his hands, I was already his wife, already trapped. You need to get out of here, Sophia hissed, gripping my arm. If he's here with another woman, his fiancée, I corrected, the word like acid in my mouth. They're planning their honeymoon. The kitchen door swung open, and Marcus appeared, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and anger. Mr. Moretti wants to see you, Grace, now. I can't. Panic clawed at my throat. I need to go home. I'm not feeling well. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me. That man owns half the judges and police chiefs in this city. If he wants to talk to you, you talk to him. I don't know what's between you two, and I don't want to know. But you don't say no to a man like that. I knew he was right. Running would only delay the inevitable. Gabriel had found me, whether by cruel coincidence or deliberate tracking. He knew where I worked now, knew I was pregnant. The fragile new life I'd been building was about to shatter. I'll go, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But not to the table. Tell him I'll meet him in your office. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. And Grace, whatever he wants, just give it to him. People who cross Gabriel Moretti have a habit of disappearing. Gabriel filled the doorframe of Marcus's cramped office, his presence consuming the oxygen in the room. He closed the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded more threatening than a slam. Even in the small space cluttered with invoices and scheduling sheets, he commanded attention like a force of nature. My Grace, he said softly, using the endearment that had once made me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. You've been hiding from me. Don't call me that, I whispered, pressing myself against the desk. And I haven't been hiding. I left. There's a difference. He moved closer, and I caught his scent, expensive cologne with notes of cedar and bergamot. The same cologne I'd given him for his birthday last year, before I knew what he really was, before I found the blood-stained shirt he'd tried to hide from me, before I overheard the phone call about the man who needed to be taken care of. You look different, he observed, his gaze traveling over me, lingering on my stomach. How far along? I swallowed hard, my hand instinctively moving to protect my unborn child. 6 months. Something flickered in his eyes. Possession, calculation, fury. With Gabriel, it was impossible to tell. His emotions were always carefully controlled, part of what made him so dangerous. Mine? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. I wanted to lie, to protect my child from his world, but the math was undeniable. Does it matter? You've moved on. Quite publicly, I might add. His jaw tightened, the only indication that my words had hit their mark. You left me, Grace. In the middle of the night like a thief. What did you expect? I expected you to let me go, I said, meeting his gaze despite the fear coiling in my stomach. I know what you are, Gabriel. What you do. I want no part of it. He smiled then, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. And yet, here you are, carrying my child. My heir. The possessiveness in his voice made me shiver. I'd seen how Gabriel viewed people, as possessions, things to be owned, controlled, discarded when they no longer served a purpose. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left, I admitted, and it changes nothing. Gabriel moved suddenly, his hands coming to rest on the arms of my chair, caging me in. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm against my skin. It changes everything, Grace. Everything. You're carrying a Moretti. My blood. Did you think I would allow my child to be raised by a waitress? To grow up in some shabby apartment, never knowing their birthright? I turned my face away, unable to bear his proximity. Better that than knowing their father is a monster. His hand shot out, gripping my chin and forcing me to look at him. There was no violence in the touch, but the threat of it hung in the air between us. You knew exactly who I was when you married me, he said, his voice eerily calm. You enjoyed the benefits of my work well enough. The jewelry, the vacations, the lifestyle. You never questioned where the money came from until it suited you to develop a conscience. The accusation stung, because there was a grain of truth to it. I had suspected Gabriel's business wasn't entirely legitimate, but I'd chosen not to look too closely. I'd been young, infatuated, and willfully blind. I was naive, I admitted, but I'm not anymore. Please, Gabriel, just let me go. Let us go. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Never. The word was final, absolute. You are mine, Grace. You will always be mine. And now, his gaze dropped to my stomach. There are two of you that belong to me. The door opened suddenly, and we both turned to see the woman in the red dress standing there, her perfect features arranged in an expression of confused irritation. Gabriel, what's going on? Why did you leave in the middle of dinner? Her gaze slid to me, taking in my waitress uniform, my disheveled appearance. Who is this? Gabriel straightened, his mask of control slipping back into place with frightening ease. Victoria, this is Grace, he said smoothly. My wife. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Ex-wife, she corrected, her voice tight. You told me you were divorced. The paperwork is ongoing, Gabriel replied, his gaze never leaving my face. And the baby? Victoria asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in my condition. The tension in the room thickened until it was hard to breathe. I looked between them, the powerful man I had once loved and now feared, and the woman who had unwittingly stepped into the dangerous role I had fled. Congratulations, I said to her, finding my voice at last. He failed to mention his pregnant ex-wife would be serving your table tonight. I wonder what else he's failed to mention. Gabriel's eyes darkened with warning, but I was beyond caring. Whatever tenuous safety I had found was already compromised. Victoria's face contorted with shock, then fury. She turned to Gabriel, her diamond ring catching the light as she pointed an accusatory finger at him. You told me she left you over a year ago, that there was no child, that you were free to marry. Each sentence emerged like the crack of a whip. I watched Gabriel, curious despite my fear to see how he would handle being caught between his lies. This man who controlled everything, who tolerated no defiance, now cornered by the simple truth. "Victoria," he said, his voice controlled but with an edge I recognized, the warning tone that preceded his worst fury. "Wait for me in the car. Dimitri will take you. I'm not going anywhere until you explain this." Her voice rose, and I saw Marcus hovering anxiously in the doorway behind her. Gabriel moved with the fluid grace that had always reminded me of a predator. In 2 strides, he was beside Victoria, his hand at the small of her back, possessive, controlling, but appearing merely solicitous to anyone watching. "We will discuss this at home," he murmured. But even from across the room, I could hear the steel beneath the velvet. "This is not the place." For a moment I thought she would resist. Then I saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options, the recognition of how little power she actually wielded in this moment. It was a look I knew intimately. "Fine," she said, her voice brittle. "But this conversation isn't over." As Gabriel guided her toward the door, he glanced back at me over his shoulder. "Don't move," he ordered, quiet enough that only I could hear. "I'll be right back." After they left, I sat in the silence of Marcus's office, my mind racing through options. I knew Gabriel's men would be watching the exits now, knew that running would only postpone the inevitable. But every instinct screamed at me to flee. Marcus remained in the doorway, fidgeting with his tie. "Grace, I don't know what's happening, but I think you should go home. Take the rest of the night off." I shook my head, rising from the chair on unsteady legs. "He'll just follow me there. I need to think." But there was no time to think. Gabriel returned within minutes, alone now, his composure perfectly intact except for the dangerous glitter in his eyes that I remembered from our worst fights. "Let's go," he said simply. "I'm not going anywhere with you." He sighed, as if dealing with a particularly stubborn child. "Grace, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, but we are leaving. Together. Now." When I didn't move, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to that deadly quiet tone. "My child will not be born in some tenement, raised in poverty while you serve drinks to strangers. That ends tonight. It's not your choice to make. Everything about you and that baby is my choice to make," he said, and the certainty in his voice was more terrifying than any threat. "You can walk out of here with me, or I can carry you. Either way, you're coming home." Home. The word twisted in my chest. That penthouse had never been home. It had been a beautiful prison, and now he was dragging me back to it. I thought of my tiny apartment, of the independence I'd fought so hard to build, of the plans I'd made for my child's future, all of it crumbling like dust in the face of Gabriel Moretti's will. "I need my things, already taken care of. Everything you need will be provided." Of course, he'd already been 3 steps ahead, as always. I stood on trembling legs, my hand moving protectively over my stomach. My daughter. I was having a daughter, something I hadn't told anyone, not even my doctor. But somehow, I knew Gabriel would find out. He always found out everything. As he guided me through the restaurant toward the exit, I caught Sophia's worried gaze from across the dining room. I tried to give her a reassuring smile, but we both knew it was a lie. The other diners barely glanced up as we passed. To them, we looked like any wealthy couple leaving after dinner. The black SUV waited at the curb, engine running. Gabriel's driver held the door open, his face expressionless as he nodded to his boss. I hesitated at the curb, the finality of stepping into that car hitting me like a physical blow. "Grace." Gabriel's voice was softer now, almost gentle. "I'll take care of you, both of you. You'll want for nothing. Except freedom." "Freedom is an illusion," he replied, his hand at the small of my back guiding me toward the open door. "Safety is real, and I can give you that." As I slid into the buttery leather seat, I wondered if he was right. If freedom was worth anything when you were alone, pregnant, and vulnerable in a city that showed no mercy to the weak. The door closed with a final click, sealing my fate. Gabriel settled beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Welcome home, Grace." But as the SUV pulled away from the curb, taking me away from my carefully constructed new life, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being delivered not to safety, but to a different kind of danger entirely. The penthouse hadn't changed. Same imported marble floors, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, same collection of priceless art that Gabriel had acquired through means I'd never questioned. Standing in the foyer I'd once called home, I felt like a ghost haunting my former life. "Your room is exactly as you left it," Gabriel said, watching my reaction carefully. "I had Elena keep everything in perfect condition. My prison, you mean?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. His jaw tightened. "Your home. Where you belong." He moved to the bar and poured himself a scotch, the crystal decanter catching the city lights. "Are you hungry? Elena prepared your favorites." The casual domesticity of the question after everything that had happened felt surreal. "I'm not staying, Gabriel. This kidnapping doesn't change anything." "Kidnapping?" He turned, eyebrow raised. "I prefer to think of it as removing you from a dangerous situation. Do you know what neighborhood you've been living in? The crime rate alone? Don't." I held up a hand, fury giving me strength. "Don't you dare lecture me about danger when you're the most dangerous person I know." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, or surprise that I would speak to him so boldly. The Grace he'd married had been softer, more compliant. Pregnancy and independence had given me a steel spine I'd never possessed before. "Sit down, Grace. We need to talk." "I'm fine standing." He set down his drink with deliberate care. It wasn't a request. The familiar command in his voice made my knees weak with conditioned response, but I forced myself to remain upright. I said, "I'm fine." For a moment, we stared at each other across the vast living room, a battle of wills that had been 6 months in the making. Finally, Gabriel moved to one of the leather chairs and sat, gesturing to the matching one across from him. "Please," he said, and the word sounded foreign in his mouth. Gabriel Moretti didn't say please to anyone. I perched on the edge of the chair, ready to flee even though I knew there was nowhere to run. "You want to talk? Talk. But nothing you say is going to make me stay here. You're carrying my child. I'm carrying my child. There's a difference." His eyes hardened. "No, Grace, there isn't. From the moment you conceived, that baby became part of the Moretti legacy. My responsibility. My protection. Your possession, you mean, if that's how you choose to see it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Tell me about the father." The question caught me off guard. "What?" "The father. The man you left me for. The one who got you pregnant and then disappeared, leaving you to serve drinks to strangers." Heat flooded my cheeks. "I didn't leave you for anyone. I left because I discovered what you really were. And yet, within weeks of our separation, you were with someone else." His voice was deceptively calm, but I could see the fury simmering beneath the surface. "Someone who clearly didn't value you enough to stick around when things got difficult. That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business." He stood abruptly, moving to the windows. "I know about Dr. Richards, Grace. Michael Richards. Internal medicine resident at Mount Sinai. 32 years old, unmarried, student loan debt of approximately $200,000. My blood turned to ice. Of course he knew. Gabriel made it his business to know everything about everyone in his orbit. "You had me watched. I had you protected. There's a difference." He turned back to me, his face a mask of controlled rage. What I want to know is how long it was going on before you left. How long you were lying to my face while fucking another man. It wasn't like that. The words exploded out of me. I met Michael after I left. He was treating me at the emergency room when I cut myself off, realizing I'd revealed too much. When you what, Grace? I looked away, unable to meet his penetrating stare. The memory of that night 6 months ago was still too painful. The panic attack that had sent me to the ER, the kind doctor who had helped me through the worst of it. The connection that had grown from shared vulnerability. When you had the breakdown, Gabriel said quietly, answering his own question. The night after you saw the warehouse footage. The warehouse. Of course he knew about that too. The night I'd followed him to one of his meetings, hidden in the shadows as I watched him orchestrate what could only be described as an execution. The moment I realized that the man I'd married wasn't just involved with dangerous people. He was dangerous people. You weren't supposed to see that, he continued, his voice almost gentle. It was business, Grace. Necessary business. Necessary? I stood up, shaking with remembered terror. You had that man tortured. I watched you. I couldn't finish the sentence. I watched you eliminate a threat to your organization. A threat to us. Gabriel moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the familiar space. Marcus Volkov had been selling information to the FBI for months. He would have destroyed everything I'd built, everything I was building for our future. Our future? I laughed bitterly. What future could we have had built on blood and fear? A future where you were safe, where our children would be safe, where no one would ever dare to threaten what was mine. His hand moved as if to touch my face, then dropped to his side. You never understood the world we lived in, Grace, the enemies we faced. I understood enough to know I didn't want to be part of it. And yet you are part of it. You always will be. He gestured around the penthouse. You think leaving me made you safer? You think that apartment in Queens, that job at the restaurant, protected you from my enemies? From people who would use you to get to me? A chill ran down my spine. What are you talking about? Victoria isn't just my fiancée, Grace. She's the daughter of the Colombo family. Our engagement was strategic, a way to consolidate power, to end a war that had been brewing for months. His smile was cold. A war that started when you left me. The room seemed to tilt around me. What do you mean? Your disappearance sent a message to my enemies that Gabriel Moretti couldn't even keep his own wife in line. It made me look weak. And weakness, in my world, is blood in the water. I sank back into the chair, the implications crashing over me. You're saying people died because I left you? I'm saying your leaving had consequences you never considered. Gabriel moved to pour himself another drink, his movements controlled but agitated. The Colombos saw an opportunity, started moving against my territory, my business. I've spent the last 6 months cleaning up the mess. By getting engaged to Victoria, by doing what was necessary to protect what's mine. He turned back to me, his gray eyes intense. But now you're back, and you're carrying my child. That changes everything. I'm not back, I said firmly. This is temporary. You can't keep me here against my will. Can't I? His smile was predatory. You're 6 months pregnant with no money, no support system, no protection. Dr. Richards is conveniently out of the picture. What did you do to him? Fear shot through me like lightning. Nothing. Yet. Gabriel's voice was casual, but the threat was crystal clear. Though I admit I'm curious about his sudden decision to take that position in Seattle. Right around the time you discovered you were pregnant, wasn't it? My heart stopped. Michael hadn't abandoned me. He'd been driven away. By Gabriel. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You threatened him. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. A very lucrative position on the West Coast, all expenses paid, with the understanding that his new life wouldn't include any contact with my wife. Ex-wife. Wife, Gabriel corrected firmly. We never divorced, Grace. You ran away, but you're still legally mine. And now, with the baby. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. Now you're mine in every way that matters. I wanted to argue, to fight, but exhaustion was weighing me down. The events of the day, the emotional upheaval, the pregnancy. It was all catching up with me at once. I need to rest, I said quietly. Of course. Gabriel's voice softened. Elena has prepared the master suite. Your clothes. The guest room, I interrupted. I'll take the guest room. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. For now. But Grace? He caught my arm gently as I stood. Don't mistake this kindness for weakness. You're home now, where you belong, and that's where you'll stay. As I walked toward the guest room on unsteady legs, I could feel his eyes on me, assessing, calculating. Gabriel Moretti always had a plan, always stayed 3 steps ahead of everyone else. I just needed to figure out what his endgame was before it was too late. The guest room was exactly as I remembered. Luxurious, impersonal, elegant. A beautiful cage for a bird who had forgotten how to fly. As I closed the door behind me, I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the gentle flutter of movement within. I'll get us out of here, I whispered to my unborn daughter. Somehow. But even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. Gabriel Moretti had reclaimed his wife, secured his heir, and neutralized his enemies all in one masterful move. The only question was whether he intended to keep me as a treasured possession or a cautionary tale. Outside the window, New York glittered like a galaxy of broken promises, and I realized that for the first time in months, I was truly afraid. 3 days passed in a strange limbo of luxury and captivity. Gabriel treated me with the careful courtesy one might show a valued prisoner, attentive to my needs, respectful of my space, but never for a moment letting me forget that I was trapped. Every door in the penthouse required a key card. Every window was secured with military-grade locks. Even the elevator needed Gabriel's personal code to operate. I spent the time trying to plan, to find some weakness in his security, some way to escape. But it became increasingly clear that Gabriel had thought of everything. The building's concierge knew me as Mrs. Moretti and would never question Gabriel's instructions about my safety. The doorman had been replaced with someone from Gabriel's organization. Even the cleaning lady watched me with suspicious eyes. You're not eating enough, Gabriel observed over breakfast on the 4th morning. Elena had prepared eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, and that herbal tea the doctor had recommended for pregnancy nausea. All my favorites, all perfectly arranged on bone china that cost more than most people made in a month. I'm fine. I pushed the eggs around my plate, appetite gone. The baby fluttered inside me, responding to my stress with restless movement. The baby needs nutrition, Grace. You need nutrition. Gabriel's voice held that edge of command I remembered so well. Elena spoke with Dr. Martinelli yesterday. He's agreed to take over your prenatal care. I have a doctor. You had a doctor. Dr. Chen's practice is hardly equipped for a high-risk pregnancy. Gabriel sipped his espresso, studying me over the rim. Dr. Martinelli is the best obstetrician in the city. He delivered the Rothschild twins, the governor's grandson. This isn't a high-risk pregnancy. It is now. The finality in his voice sent a chill through me. Any pregnancy involving my child is high risk by definition. The enemies I've made, the threats we face, Our daughter will need the best protection from the moment she's born. Our daughter. He'd started using that phrase more frequently, and each time it sounded less like possession and more like something else, something that scared me almost as much as his anger had. "What about Victoria?" I asked, changing the subject. "How are you explaining my sudden reappearance to your fiancé?" Gabriel's expression darkened. "Victoria is no longer your concern." "But she's still your concern, apparently." I'd seen him on several phone calls over the past few days, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper he used when delivering threats. How exactly does a mafia princess handle being replaced by the pregnant ex-wife? "She doesn't." Gabriel stood abruptly, moving to the window. "The engagement was always business, Grace. You know that. You were always the personal choice." "Personal choice," I repeated bitterly. "Like choosing a piece of art or a new car." He turned back to me, something vulnerable flickering in his gray eyes. "Like choosing the woman I wanted to spend my life with. The woman I wanted to be the mother of my children." His voice softened. "The woman I fell in love with before I knew what love could cost." The unexpected honesty in his words caught me off guard. This wasn't the calculated manipulation I'd expected, but something rawer, more dangerous because it felt real. "Love?" I stood up, fury giving me strength. "You call this love? Kidnapping me? Threatening my doctor? Controlling every aspect of my life?" "I call it protection." Gabriel moved toward me, his presence filling the space between us. "I call it ensuring that what happened 6 months ago never happens again. What happened 6 months ago was me discovering who you really were. What happened 6 months ago was me failing to protect you from truths you weren't ready to handle." His hand reached out, almost touching my face before dropping to his side. "I should have prepared you gradually, helped you understand the necessities of my world. Necessities like murder? Necessities like survival." Gabriel's voice hardened. Marcus Volkov had already given the FBI enough information to bring down half my organization. If I hadn't acted, we'd both be in federal prison right now. Or dead. I wanted to argue, to maintain my moral high ground, but 6 months of independence had taught me something about the gray areas of survival. I'd stolen food when I couldn't afford groceries. I'd lied on job applications about my employment history. I'd done things I'd never imagined myself capable of when the alternative was sleeping on the street. That doesn't make it right. Right and wrong are luxuries for people who don't have enemies. Gabriel stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jawline from a knife fight he'd mentioned once in passing. "I don't have that luxury, Grace. And neither do you. Not anymore. Because of you. Because of us." His hand finally made contact, fingers brushing along my cheek with devastating gentleness. "Because of the choice you made to marry me, to become part of my world. That doesn't end just because you decide you don't like the consequences." I wanted to pull away from his touch, but my body betrayed me, leaning into the familiar comfort, despite everything my mind was screaming. 6 months of being alone, of carrying this pregnancy without support, of wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. It all came crashing down in that moment. "I was scared," I whispered, the admission ripped from somewhere deep inside me. "That night at the warehouse, I was terrified of what you were capable of. What you might do to someone who crossed you." "And you thought you'd crossed me?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Gabriel's other hand came up to frame my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Grace, look at me. Really look at me." His voice was softer than I'd heard it since our wedding day. "You are the only person in this world who could never cross me, the only person I would forgive anything. Even leaving you, even leaving me." His thumb brushed away a tear I didn't realize had fallen. "Though I'll never let you do it again." The promise should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a traitorous warmth through my chest. The exhaustion of fighting, of being alone, of trying to build a life from nothing while carrying his child. It was all too much. "What do you want from me, Gabriel?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want my wife back. I want my family." His forehead touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. "I want to protect you the way I should have from the beginning." Protection or possession? Can't they be the same thing? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. Before I could respond, Elena appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Moretti, your 11 o'clock is here." Gabriel stepped back reluctantly, the businessman sliding back into place over the vulnerable man I'd glimpsed. "Tell him I'll be right there." He turned back to me. "Dr. Martinelli will be here at 3 for your appointment. Please be ready." The appointment with Dr. Martinelli revealed what I'd been dreading to face. I was further along than I'd thought. 28 weeks, not 24. The baby was healthy, active, measuring perfectly for her gestational age. But the timeline meant conception had happened during those final weeks of my marriage to Gabriel, not after I'd left as I'd let him believe. "Everything looks excellent, Mrs. Moretti," Dr. Martinelli said, his kind eyes crinkling as he printed the ultrasound images. "Your daughter is developing beautifully. Have you given any thought to names?" Gabriel's hand tightened on mine where he sat beside the examination table. We hadn't discussed names, hadn't discussed much of anything about the actual baby beyond her existence as a complication in our fractured relationship. "Lucia," I said suddenly, the name emerging from somewhere deep in my memory. "After my grandmother." "Lucia Moretti," Gabriel repeated, testing the sound. "Beautiful." Something in his voice made me look at him, and I saw an expression I'd never witnessed before. Wonder mixed with fierce protection, as if he was seeing our daughter for the first time instead of a medical readout on a screen. After Dr. Martinelli left, we sat in silence in Gabriel's study. The ultrasound photos lay between us on his desk, like evidence in a trial neither of us wanted to face. 28 weeks, Gabriel said finally. "Yes. Which means she's yours, completely yours. There's no question." I couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't bear to see the satisfaction I knew would be there. But when I finally looked up, Gabriel's expression wasn't triumphant. It was stricken, almost pained. "Grace, why didn't you tell me? Why let me think?" "Because I was afraid." The words burst out of me. "I was afraid you'd use her to control me, to force me back into a life I couldn't handle. I was afraid you'd take her away from me if you knew the truth." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the desk in the pattern I remembered from our marriage. 3 short taps when he was thinking through a complex problem. "There's something I need to tell you," he said finally, "about why you really needed to come home." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" Gabriel opened his laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen were surveillance photos, grainy images of me leaving my apartment, walking to work, shopping for groceries. But it wasn't Gabriel's men taking the pictures. The angles were wrong, the positions too exposed for professionals. "The Volkov family didn't disappear when I eliminated Marcus," Gabriel said quietly. "His brother Dmitri has been building a case for revenge. He's been watching you for weeks." My blood turned to ice. Watching me for what? For an opportunity. Gabriel clicked to the next image, a photo of me at the restaurant, clearly pregnant, serving tables. "He knows about the baby, Grace. Knows she's mine. And he knows that taking both of you would destroy me more completely than any business rival ever could." I stared at the photos, seeing my carefully constructed independent life through the eyes of a predator. Every routine I'd established, every pattern I'd followed, had made me an easy target. How long have you known? 2 weeks. My security team intercepted communications 3 days ago discussing a plan to take you from the restaurant. Gabriel's voice was deadly calm. The night I came to Lumiere wasn't coincidence, Grace. It was extraction. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You mean the whole scene with Victoria was theater? A way to get you out of immediate danger without alerting Dimitri's people that I knew about their surveillance. Gabriel closed the laptop. Victoria played her part perfectly. The broken engagement gives her family an excuse to distance themselves from the coming war. War? Gabriel's smile was cold. Did you think I would let threats against my wife and child go unanswered? I felt sick. Once again, I was a pawn in Gabriel's world, moved around a chessboard I couldn't see by players whose rules I didn't understand. But this time, it wasn't just my life at stake. So this is all about revenge? Getting me back to hurt your enemies? This is about family. Gabriel stood, moving around the desk to where I sat. About protecting what matters most to me in this world. And what if I don't want your protection? What if I'd rather take my chances? Look at me, Grace. Gabriel's voice cut through my protest. Look at me and tell me you're willing to risk our daughter's life to make a point about your independence. I couldn't. As much as I resented being manipulated, as much as I hated being back in his world, I couldn't gamble with Lucia's safety. Gabriel saw the moment I capitulated, saw the fight drain out of me. There's more, he said gently. About Dr. Richards. My heart stopped. What about Michael? Gabriel pulled out his phone and showed me a news article from a Seattle newspaper. The headline made my knees weak. Local doctor missing after hospital shift. No, I whispered. No, you said he was safe. You said... I said I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. I didn't say what happened when he tried to refuse it anyway. Gabriel's voice was carefully neutral. Dr. Richards contacted you 2 weeks ago, didn't he? Tried to convince you to come to Seattle with him. I had received a call from Michael. He'd sounded strange, frightened, begging me to meet him, to leave New York immediately. I'd thought he was having second thoughts about our breakup. I'd hung up on him. Dimitri's people got to him first, Gabriel continued. Used him to try to locate you, when he wouldn't cooperate. He gestured to the phone screen. Is he dead? I could barely force the words out. Unknown. But Grace, you need to understand. This is what happens to people in my world who don't take protection seriously. Michael thought he could handle himself against men like Dmitri Volkov. He was wrong. I was going to be sick. Michael. Kind and gentle Michael, who'd held my hair back during morning sickness and rubbed my feet when they swelled. He was gone because of me. Because of my connection to Gabriel. I want to see Vincent, I said suddenly, thinking of Gabriel's right-hand man. I want to hear this from someone else. Gabriel's expression shuddered. Vincent is unavailable. What does that mean? It means he's no longer part of my organization. The careful way Gabriel said it sent warning bells ringing in my head. Vincent had been Gabriel's most trusted lieutenant, closer than a brother. They'd served together in the military before Gabriel inherited his father's empire. Gabriel, what happened to Vincent? Vincent made choices that put you and the baby at risk. I don't tolerate that from anyone. Gabriel's voice was ice. Not even from family. I stared at him, seeing a stranger again. The gentle man who'd held my hand during the ultrasound was gone, replaced by the cold Dawn who eliminated threats without hesitation. You killed him. I protected us. Gabriel moved to the window, his back to me. Vincent was feeding information to the Volkovs, planning to use you as bait to draw me into a trap, when I discovered his betrayal. You murdered your best friend. I executed a traitor. Gabriel turned back to me, his gray eyes empty, just like I'll execute anyone else who threatens what's mine. The finality in his voice terrified me. This wasn't the passionate man I'd married, or even the cold businessman I'd left. This was something else entirely, something that would destroy anyone and anything that stood between him and what he considered his property, including me, if I pushed too far. "I need air," I said, standing on shaky legs. "The terrace is safe. Dimitri's people can't get a clear shot from any of the surrounding buildings." Gabriel's casual mention of sniper fire made me realize how completely I'd underestimated the danger I was in. As I stepped onto the terrace overlooking Central Park, the October wind cutting through my sweater, I placed both hands on my stomach. Lucia moved restlessly, as if sensing my distress. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm so sorry I brought you into this world." But even as I said it, I knew it was too late for regrets. I was bound to Gabriel Moretti now, not just by marriage or love or fear, but by the innocent life growing inside me. A life that made me more vulnerable than I'd ever been, but also gave me something worth fighting for. The question wasn't whether I could escape Gabriel's world anymore. The question was whether I could survive it long enough to protect our daughter from the darkness that seemed to swallow everything he touched. The war came to us 3 days later. I woke at dawn to the sound of breaking glass and Gabriel's voice, deadly calm, issuing orders in rapid Italian. Elena appeared at my bedroom door, her face pale but composed. "Mrs. Moretti, we need to move you to the safe room. Now." The safe room was something Gabriel had mentioned during our marriage but never shown me. A reinforced panic room hidden behind his study, stocked with enough supplies to last weeks. As Elena ushered me through the hidden door, I caught glimpses of Gabriel coordinating with his men, weapons appearing from concealed compartments I'd never known existed. "What's happening?" I asked Elena as she sealed us inside the windowless room lined with monitors showing every angle of the building. "Dmitri Volkov has made his move," she replied, checking her own pistol with practiced efficiency. 20 men, maybe more. They've taken the lobby and are working their way up. On the screens, I could see the carnage, bodies in the elegant marble foyer, shattered glass, men in tactical gear moving with military precision. Gabriel's security team was fighting back, but they were outnumbered. "Why didn't Gabriel see this coming?" I demanded, fear making my voice sharp. Elena's expression was grim. "He did. This is exactly what he expected. A trap." Gabriel had used me as bait, just as I'd always feared. The realization should have filled me with rage, but instead I felt a strange calm. Of course he had. It was what Gabriel did. He planned, he manipulated, he stayed 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "How many of our people will die for this?" I asked quietly. "As many as it takes to keep you and the baby safe," Elena replied without hesitation. "Mr. Moretti has been very clear about priorities." Through the monitors, I watched Gabriel move through his penthouse like an avenging angel. He wasn't hiding behind his men. He was leading them, a pistol in each hand, his movements fluid and deadly. This was the man I'd fallen in love with. Not the businessman or the Don, but the warrior underneath it all. Then I saw Vincent. He appeared on one of the screens leading a group of Volkov soldiers toward Gabriel's study. Alive. Unharmed. Very clearly not the victim of Gabriel's justice as I'd been told. "Elena," I said carefully, "is that Vincent on screen 3? Elena glanced at the monitor and her face went white. "That's impossible. Mr. Moretti said—" Mr. Moretti lied. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Vincent isn't dead. He's the one who's been feeding information to the Volkovs. But Gabriel knows that, doesn't he? This whole thing is theater. Elena's hand moved to her weapon, and I realized with cold certainty that I'd said too much. She wasn't my protector. She was my guard. "Mrs. Moretti, please sit down." The stress isn't good for the baby. Gabriel orchestrated all of this, I continued, my voice growing stronger as the truth crystallized. The photos, the threat, bringing me back here. He needed me here for something, didn't he? Not to protect me, to use me. Through the monitors, I watched Gabriel and Vincent embrace like old friends, while Volkov soldiers lay down their weapons. No fierce gunfight, no desperate last stand. A business transaction wrapped in the theater of war. What does he want, Elena? What's worth staging his own death for? Because that's what this was, I realized. Gabriel was about to disappear, leaving his enemies to believe they'd won while he vanished with his pregnant wife and unborn heir. A chance to start over, somewhere beyond the reach of law enforcement and rival families alike. You'll have to ask him that yourself, Elena said, as alarms began blaring throughout the safe room. The monitors went dark one by one, and I heard the heavy steel door beginning to unseal. Gabriel stepped through, not a scratch on him despite the supposed battle, his gray eyes finding mine immediately. It's done, he said simply. What's done, Gabriel? Your fake death? Your elaborate escape plan? Using our daughter as justification for destroying the lives of everyone who trusted you. Gabriel studied my face, seeing the knowledge there. For a moment, something like regret flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. You always were too smart for your own good, he said. Yes, Grace. This was all planned. The Volkovs think they've won. Law enforcement thinks the Moretti organization has been decimated, and we disappear. We, you, me, and Lucia. A new life, away from all of this. Gabriel gestured around the safe room. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to leave this world behind? Not like this. Not built on the graves of innocent people. No one innocent died today. Gabriel's voice was matter-of-fact. Every casualty was calculated. Every death was someone who betrayed me or threatened what's mine. I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the monster I'd married. Not passionate or impulsive, but coldly calculating. Everything. Our marriage, my pregnancy, even my escape and return, had all been moves in a game only he understood. You never loved me, I said quietly. You loved the idea of me. The perfect mafia wife who would give you the perfect heir and never ask questions. Something cracked in Gabriel's composed facade. I loved you enough to burn down everything I built to keep you safe. You burned it down to control me. Sometimes those are the same thing. Elena had withdrawn to give us privacy, but I could feel her presence nearby, armed and ready. There would be no last-minute escape, no dramatic rescue. Gabriel had won, completely and finally. What happens now? I asked, my hand moving protectively over my belly. Now we go home, our real home. I have a compound in Argentina completely off the grid. You'll be safe there. Our daughter will be safe. Gabriel stepped closer, his voice softening. You can hate me, Grace. You can spend the rest of your life despising what I've done. But you'll do it from somewhere no one can ever hurt you again. And if I refuse? Gabriel's smile was sad. You won't, because despite everything, you know I'm the only one who can protect Lucia, and you'll do anything to keep her safe, even if it means spending your life with a monster. He was right, and we both knew it. I could sacrifice myself for principles, but I couldn't sacrifice my daughter. Gabriel had counted on that, had built his entire plan around my maternal instincts. I hate you, I whispered. I know. Gabriel's hand reached out to touch my face, and this time I didn't pull away. But you'll learn to forgive me. In time. When Lucia is old enough to understand why her father had to become the villain in everyone else's story to be the hero in hers. As he led me from the safe room through the destroyed penthouse toward whatever new life he'd orchestrated, I caught sight of our reflection in a shattered mirror. Gabriel, calm and controlled, his arm around his pregnant wife. Me, pale but resolute, my hand protective over my unborn child. We looked like exactly what we were, a family bound together by love and fear and the terrible choices we'd made in the name of survival. And despite everything, despite the lies and manipulation and blood, I knew Gabriel was right about one thing. I would learn to forgive him. Because in his twisted way, everything he'd done had been for us, for the family he'd never had, for the future he'd never dared imagine, for the love he'd never learned how to express, except through possession and protection. As we stepped into the private elevator that would take us to our new life, Gabriel's hand found mine. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for all of it, but I'm not sorry for keeping you." I squeezed his fingers, feeling Lucia flutter between us as if she could sense the tension. "I know," I said, "and that's what scares me most of all." The elevator doors closed, sealing us into our golden cage. But as we descended toward whatever Gabriel had planned next, I realized that maybe being owned by someone who would kill to protect you wasn't the worst fate in the world. Maybe it was just love in its most dangerous form. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.